Hello, I'm Pastor Albert Starr, and I serve as Director for Ethnic Specific and Multicultural Ministries and Program Director for African Descent Ministries at our church-wide organization in Chicago for the ELCA. A couple of years ago, I had the honor, along with Bishop Abraham Allende, as serving as co-convener for the Authentic Diversity Task Force, Strategic Task Force, as that task force was doing the work of developing a report and recommendations for the ELCA that were adopted at our 2019 Churchwide Assembly. Those recommendations have become a course of action that is intended to assist, to help with the work of moving us as a church toward more authentic diversity. We know that authentic diversity cannot be achieved, will not be achieved systemically without acknowledging the reality of racism as a pervasive factor in our society and even within the life of our church. And so we must recognize racism as violence, no matter the shape, the form, or the fashion in which that racism may manifest. It's violence. And we have to get clear about that. And because of that violence, then healing is a critical part. Healing action becomes a critical part of this proposed recommendation, this compilation of strategies for moving toward authentic diversity. And so I want to talk a little bit with you about healing actions. And as a kid growing up in North Carolina, and I was just thinking on that as you are in retreat, thinking about as a kid in North Carolina, growing up at Abiding Savior Lutheran Church there in Durham, North Carolina. Our pastor at the time was Larry Hunt. And Pastor Hunt took me to probably the first of the early sessions at what was then just beginning to emerge as Camp Lutherock there in the mountains of North Carolina. But I think about that because it was on those narrow hiking trails up in the mountains that I first learned about rattlesnakes, and then in further searching, I remember remembering back on an old man that we met up there as we were hiking through the mountains, and he was telling us about rattlesnakes and how venomous and how poisonous they were. Well, I think about the venom of the rattlesnake, that hemotoxin that causes rapid deterioration of muscles and tissue, and it causes internal bleeding. And I think about and relate that then to how spiritually and emotionally and mentally racism, the violence of racism, causes tremendous internal damage to our spirit, to our souls, individually and collectively. It causes that kind of deterioration, that kind of a wasting away of strength and vitality. It inhibits the flow of, just like that poison, that venom inhibits the flow of rich oxygenated blood to the whole body. And if not stopped, that it will bring death to the entire body. Well, in the same way, I want to encourage that we consider what the toxin of racism does to the body politic, not only to this nation, but globally, to the whole world. Racism. Consider the toxin, what that toxin of racism does even to the body of Christ. I want to read a little bit from that section of the recommendation, the report of the Strategic Task Force that calls for confession, reflection, and healing action. And in that category, in that section that talks about healing and why healing, it says that our church must, with increasing intentionality, acknowledge and name the pervasive wound of racism. A church must boldly recognize and renounce the many forms of denial that contribute to the continuation of racist thought, action, policy, and practice. Our church must fully engage in a metanoia movement, which calls for a change of heart and mind. A change of heart and mind then that will, in partnership with the gospel of Jesus Christ, generate redemptive recognition, restorative justice, and the conscious development of capacity for healing. Even some additional work, Goal 3 of Future Directions 2025. You may be familiar with that document and that strategic plan. But it aims to equip church members to understand and to speak out and to act against discrimination that's based on race, gender, disability, sexual orientation, and even social status. And if we truly embody and enact on these strategic plans, these motivations here, then it will and it can initiate a kind of healing process within every aspect of the ELCA, our beloved church. Well, the healthy society, in order to be a healthy society or even a healthy church, we cannot do so and at the same time tolerate the very stuff that is killing the body, killing our bodies, and poisoning our souls. The recommendations are intended, as they are engaged, then to become both mandate and marching orders for us as we move intentionally toward this work of becoming increasingly ethnically diverse and an inclusive church, an intentionally racially and ethnically inclusive church. If we take a look at the recommendations, and I want to encourage you to do so during the course of your time in retreat, because it's not only a matter of looking at and being familiar with these, but it's also moving to the point of some real and intentional engagement. And so when we think about recommendations for healing, one of the first things that we must think about is awareness. Expanding and increasing the awareness, and what role that each of us, and certainly within the course of the work, your work as a Senate and Senate leaders, raising the awareness not only of the document and what it calls for, but consciously thinking together about how, beyond just being aware of this resource and the call for authentic diversity, how do we begin to weave this work in and move it from the margins to the center of our thinking and our actions for becoming an authentically diverse and inclusive church. And so a part of that work may call for then hosting opportunities for deeper understanding of the systemic and the root causes of historical and contemporary racism, no matter where we may find that, and the impact of internalized racial oppression. Also, moving and encouraging deeper reflection time, personally and individually and collectively, just as you're doing in this time of retreat. The reflection for encouraging participation and providing learning opportunities, out of which then may come the action of writing papers and creating blogs and other social media posts, and using whatever resources and opportunities that are available to us to raise the consciousness of our commitment and our call for this kind of work. And also then investing in the kind of training that will help to increase our capacity for being an anti-racist church. We want to encourage you to collectively to take a closer look at the recommendations with the hope that you will become both advocates and champions for this work. The work that's outlined and described in this document that calls for our authentic diversity. God's blessings on your time. And if there's any way at all that we as your partners at Churchwide can be right along with you in this work, know that our hearts and our minds are committed to being there and investing right along with you. God's peace be with you.